And I actually had somebody ask me this morning, you have students Skype into your class? Yeah, I've been doing it now for 4 years. For 3 years now. It blows my mind.
I appreciate you doing it because I'm all the way in Clemson. It'd be nice to not have to drive to Anderson.
Why did you have a class in Anderson if you live in Clemson?
Well, because I know your cousin, and he told me to take your class.
You're not teaching Anderson, is that it? Okay.
And I'm in Anderson enough, so I figured I'll take it.
Oh,
and
yeah,
I like Miss
work at Anderson. I thought maybe you wanted to take a class. Okay, I'm sorry. You work in Anderson.
I'm finishing my graduate plan, and I need a good teacher. So.
Oh, Lord, I don't know about that. Okay. Okay, I'm going to go in here, and we're going to pull up, and then we'll get started. TCTC, and they don't have anything in this computer that I use. Maybe one day.
Forgot lab. Yeah, you forgot lab.
Oh.
No.
Okay, just forget it. Let's just go home. What?
I'm getting tired.
We're going to get about 10 minutes in today. There we go. And how far did we get the other day? We got 1.5, and that's it? That's the last section, right? Did we get all the way through? No, so we got to do chapter 2 and 1.5. So we'll go do that. And I did turn on your homework, so I did do something productive, I think. Or I fixed your homework to where you should have more than 2 tries. I don't know where some of these teachers come from. I really don't. Let me explain that to you. I didn't design the 120 MyLabs Plus homework. I do the test, but I didn't do the homework. Each one of our full-time instructors, like I'm in charge of college algebra and college trig. Okay, so I do the MyLabs Plus homework for college algebra and college trig. Somebody else does so somebody turned their homework to 2 answers. So I had to go through and change it to unlimited. Because I feel like if you bang your head up against the wall enough, like I did when I was a student, you finally figure what? Figure something out. You're not going to figure something out in 2 questions unless you already what? Unless you already know it. So I believe the repetition kind of helps. So that's why I went in and changed all of them to unlimited answers. Capiche? Or whatever you say. Yeah, I got to learn that.
And you did that today?
I did it. I already did it.
Okay.
I did it. Y'all check. Somebody with a laptop, go in there and check to see if you can do more than 1 try. I think you should be able to. Yes or no?
You can.
I thought so. All right, 1.5 and chapter 2. Now, I did see some questions, but with all that's happened today, we don't have questions. We'll go through questions next time. Let me finish chapter 1, and then we'll go over. Does anybody remember which was the last word that we put in there? Response. Okay. Well, I'm looking. We talked about bias, response bias. Was that the last one? Okay. And we talked about surveys, and remember that you can't ask a question on a survey that leads. You can't ask a question on a survey that limits your question. What if I say, who do you want to vote for in the next election, or in the 1927 election? Okay, then I would put John Smith or Roberta Jones, and then I just cut off the other 3 or 4. You can't do that. You've got to include what? Everybody that's running. You can't just put 2 people out of 5. All right? Unless your actual experiment or whatever tells you to do that. Okay? Data entry enter. That's self-explanatory. That's a mistake. Instead of typing in 105 people, you type in 150. You got to watch stuff like that. That's not a big deal. I'm not going to ask you that on the test. I'm trying to get to the stuff that I'm actually going to ask you. We talked about experiment. Okay, write down some of these. You don't have to write word for word. We talked about an experiment. An experiment, what's the difference between an observation and an experiment? You just watch. Remember the perv, you just watch, okay? And then, what is an experiment? That's where something is interjected into the observation. Okay, you don't have to write down experiment unless you just want to. Control group. Control group is a baseline group. Let's say that we have an experiment on the blue pill and the red pill. The blue pill makes you gain weight. The red pill makes you lose weight. We got to have that control group. We got to have a control group as a third section to say these are the people that didn't take a pill. And everybody eats the same food for 3 months and has the same exercise regimen, and we see what happens. Which one is the control group? The group that did not take a red pill or a blue pill. Everybody with me? That's the control group. And the placebo. Placebo is very important. Everyone needs to know what a placebo is because everybody's going to have a mother-in-law. Why should I say that? Well, I don't have a mother-in-law anymore. Anyway, mother-in-laws, they're all schizophrenic. It's schizophrenic when you think everybody, hypochondriac.
Hypochondriac when you think everything's wrong.
Yeah, that's a mother-in-law. And just carry around a bottle of placebos and just give it to her and say, here, take 4 or 5 of these, you'll feel better in the morning. It works. Okay, what is a placebo? It's a sugar pill. It has no medicinal what? Value.
But you trick your brain.
Trick your brain into thinking that it works. Okay? So guys, if you're smart and don't get married till you're 40, 35 or 40, you'll be all right. But 25-year-olds can't handle a mother-in-law. Period. Hell, some 40-year-olds can't handle a mother-in-law. Anybody got a question there? Just don't get married. Blinds, I'm not going to do blinding. We're not going to do that. These are things you never see unless you're in a research class. Oh, this is 1.6. That's why. That's why we don't see this. So let me get out of there. We're done. I just want to make sure we were done with that. I don't want to skip anything. Chapter 2. What is a frequency table? A frequency table is a 25-cent word for a chart. Okay? It's a 25-cent word for a head count. Blondes, brunettes, and redheads. Redheads? Y'all know what a redhead is, don't you? Blondes, brunettes, and redheads. Blondes, brunettes, and redheads is called categorical data. I put blonde, brunette, redheads on the left, and then I count the number of people, and that's the head count on the right. That is called a frequency distribution. Okay? All it is a chart. It's got the category on the left. It's got the head count on the right. Capiche? Now, you're going to see other types of tables, and you're going to see other types of frequency distributions. You're going to see bar charts. You're going to see pie charts. Are they important? Yes. Okay. There we go. Frequency distribution. So I want you to write down frequency distribution and then go over and write down it's a table or a chart. That's all it is. Remember me telling you about the guy that started, or the person that started statistics, not being able to do math, so he just made up a bunch of words that made him sound smart? Okay? This is one of those words, a frequency distribution. It's a chart. Let's go ahead and make a frequency distribution. Blondes, brunettes, and redheads. 2, 4, 6. That is a frequency distribution. And how many times have you used a frequency distribution in your life and didn't know it was called a frequency distribution? You called it a chart or a table. That's all it is. I told you the difference between a histogram and a bar chart, didn't I? I can't remember. I've got 3, right now I've got 3 classes in probability and statistics. 103, 12010, and 12023, or whatever. Okay, so I'm
told us that 103.
Okay, yeah, we did that in 103. Thank you. Every time somebody Skypes in, their voice scares the crap out of me when I hear it. All right. Anyway, because you're not expecting something to come from that speaker. All right. So you use tables, a bar chart, and a histogram. You know, a bar chart, you have 3 bars. Okay. You put the bars together, you have a histogram. So what's the difference between a histogram and a bar chart mathematically? Not a damn thing. There's no difference between the two. But one sounds better than bar chart. So they call it a histogram. See, you're going to see a lot of that in statistics. All right? Like I said, sometimes I believe statistics and probability, or probability and statistics, was just made up by somebody that didn't want to fool with being a mathematician. Okay? Because to me, they make a lot of stuff difficult that's not, just by the sound of the terminology. So that is a frequency distribution. How do I find the total in the class? I add up all the head count. So we've got 12 people. N is equal to 12. Make sure you write that down here. N is equal to 12. N is the total head count. And you're going to need that in order to do a frequency distribution, okay, or a relative frequency. Somebody tell me what a relative frequency is. It's a percent. But you don't call it a percent in probability and statistics. You call it a relative frequency. So we're going to go ahead and do a relative frequency. Two over 12, 4 over 12, 6 over 12. If I told you to give me the relative frequency of this frequency distribution on a test, I bet you half of you to 3/4 of you would not know what to do. But if I told you, please write down the percentage of blondes, brunettes, and redheads, 90% of you would do it correctly. You see what I'm saying about probability and statistics? Half the time, you have to cut through all the stuff to figure out what you're actually doing. Does that make sense? So when I tell you in probability and statistics or in Math 103, you've got to know how to read, that's what I'm talking about. The math in probability and statistics is 6th grade math. People don't fail probability and statistics because of the math. People fail it because of 2 things: the teacher, or they can't cut through a lot of the stuff. And sometimes it's a combination of both. Okay? So that's how you do a relative frequency. So make sure you use that next time you go out, so you can sound big and sure of yourself. Relative frequency and a frequency distribution. And then you'll sound smart. What is a cumulative frequency? You add up all the numbers. Cumulative frequency. 2. What's 2 plus 4? 6. That's cumulative frequency. I'm sorry, 2 plus 4 is 6. 6 plus 6 is what? 12. And that's how you do it. You just add up all the numbers. Should be 2, 4, and 6. I'm sorry. 2, 4, and 6. The cumulative frequency is 100% worthless. There's no need for it. I mean, it's just, I have no idea to this day, and I've been graduated from Clemson since 1994, December of 1994, and I have no earthly idea what the cumulative frequency is used for. So, if you find out, let me know, okay? Because I have no idea. You know what I personally think it is? I personally think it's a way for you to find n. Because I don't have any other, that takes talent to write with your mouse. That takes real talent. Try it at home. It's not very easy. But anyway, n is equal to 12. That's the only reason I can come up with having a cumulative frequency. Because to me, there's no mathematical value of a cumulative frequency. But okay, so this is a frequency distribution. Somebody tell me, is it qualitative or quantitative? Please write that down so you'll know, because that's a standardized test question. Is this qualitative or quantitative frequency distribution? Why? Because what does it have on the left-hand side? Does it have classes or does it have categories? Categories. What would a quantitative frequency distribution have? Classes. We'll do one of those next. Let's see if I can erase this. Nope, I have to do this. So I want you to draw another table. And this time, I want you to put ages on the left and head count on the right. I'm sorry, it's not head count, it's called frequency. That's what the head count's called, frequency. So here, we're going to have age, and here, that's head count. I refuse to write frequency. I can't spell either. Is that head count? Yeah. Don't look right. All right, so 15 to 19, 20 to 24, 25 to 29, 30 to 34. 2, 4, 6, 1. Okay? So there is my frequency distribution. This is a quantitative frequency distribution. Can I find the average or the midpoint or whatever of the left-hand side? Yes. Now I have no idea if we've covered this or not, but I'm going to go into it right now. Class width. Let's write down the class width. Well, why didn't you do that before? Somebody tell me the class width of blonde, brunettes, and redheads. Can't. Class width. That's one thing we're going to find. What is the left-hand side of the ages called? Well, this is just a title. We don't have to calculate this. I'm going to take my handy-dandy. Do I have a highlighter? I don't have it. See, that's what I don't understand. In my other classroom, I have a highlighter on here. What? I already did that. I did full. See? And in this class, I don't have a highlighter. 2050, maybe. So I'm going to take my handy-dandy yellow highlighter so y'all can complain about not being able to see it. And I'm going to highlight this side, and I'm going to call that my lower class limit. Lower class limit. Now you don't need to calculate it, you just need to know it. That's called the lower class limit. So somebody with a little bit of deduction and critical thinking, tell me what the right-hand side is. Y'all are gifted and talented. Y'all feel good about yourselves. So we're going to hit the green, and this is my upper class limit. Now, to find my handy-dandy class width, I just subtract two coinciding upper class limit or lower class limit. Okay? So, however you want to do it. So, here we go. I'm going to pick 2 or 3. What is 20 minus 15? 5. What is 30 minus 25? What is 34 minus 29? So, what is the class width of this frequency distribution? 5. Now, Hubert, why didn't you just go across? Because students mess that up. Okay? What's 19 minus 15? You just got it wrong. Don't do that. You have to count the actual numbers. Let me count them. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. If you're going to do it that way, you have to actually count. You have to be inclusive of the 15 and the 19. If you subtract, you're not being inclusive. So you get the problem wrong every single time. So you can remember all of that, or you can just go the way I told you. Okay? That is a test question. That is a standardized test question. That is something important. So what's left? Midpoint. Now, you're going to be using the midpoint later in this class with a very big formula, so get used to it. The midpoint is the same as the mid-range. For those of you that know how to find the mid-range, that is your lower class limit plus your upper class limit divided by what? 2. So I'm going to find my midpoint, 15 plus 19 divided by 2. 15 plus 19 is dang old what? 34? 34 divided by 2 is what? 17, Hubert. So I'm going to take my handy-dandy magenta. Hopefully this program has magenta. Yep. And I'm going to put 17 as my midpoint right here. Now I want to find all of them. Well, I don't want to calculate all of them. Well, don't. Just add class width to each one. What's 17 plus 5? 22, Hubert. Thank you. What's 22 plus 5? What's 27? Wait, let's do this one. 30 plus 34 is 64, right? What's half of 64? Dang on Marlboro Reds, you gotta lay off of them. 32. No, those aren't Marlboro Red coughs. You know the Marlboro Red coughs, right? The right lung is coming up through the, yeah, those are the ones. Oh. There's 2 or 3 things that I can't take. Beef liver and anything having to do with smoking, I can't handle it. I'm not talking about the social smokers. I'm talking about the ones that, you know, are on an oxygen tank, and, you know, 98 years old and smoking a Marlboro 100 about this long. That, to me, don't make sense. But I don't have an addictive personality, so I can't relate to some of those. I'm glad. Question on midpoint. Well, what else is left? Class boundary. Class boundary. What is the class boundary? The class boundary, and we'll do this in black. The class boundary is just, it's real easy. You don't have to calculate it. Class boundary. I have to tell y'all something funny, but I'll tell you after this. Class boundary is if you have whole numbers as the class, upper class and lower class. If you have whole numbers, it's going to be the tenths. If you have tenths as the lower class, it's going to be hundredths. If you have hundredths as the upper and lower class, What do you think you're going to go to? The thousandths, and so on. Everybody got the pattern? So here's whole numbers. So I'm going to write my class boundaries with whole numbers in whatever color's left. Let's go with this aqua. No, I haven't used blue yet. Okay, so what comes before 15? 13, right? But I got to use tenths. So that's going to be 13.5. Add 5. What's 5? What's 13.5 plus 5?
Why would it be 14?
It should. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, let's go ahead and get this out of the way. Y'all do this all the time. I write down a number, and you leave it up there. And then you say, and then I say, well, it should be 14. And then everybody says what? Let's go ahead and say it on 3. Everybody say, oh, yeah, I thought that was right. 1, 2, 3. Okay, y'all got it out of your system now? All right, what's 14.5 plus 4? What's 5? I might as well just quit. 19 plus 5, 19.5 plus 5. Y'all get the idea? Okay. 29.5. There's your class boundaries. It's real simple. Make sure you can get those 3 things, because all 3 of those are test questions. And they will come not with a qualitative frequency distribution, but with a quantitative. And you need to be able to find that midpoint, because that midpoint later on is called X. So you might want to write that down. We'll do that in red, and I never write in red. There's the magic song.
Hi there.
Hi there.
It's currently 10:55 a.m.
That's going to be called X later, and this is going to be called F
67 degrees Fahrenheit.
for a frequency.
The low is 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Looks like it'll be a cloudy.
Looks like a snowflake is going to fall in South Carolina, and everybody's going to run in the ditch. And buy what in South Carolina? Bread and milk. So you can make a milk soup, I guess. I don't know. I buy beer and pizza. Actually, I don't drink very much beer, but I just say that. Okay, let y'all go through your convulsions, and I will remember where we are. We just did 2.1, we just did a quantity. Write that down so you can tell me how to do my job the next time. Let me shut off the recorder, and I will try to call the roll. Let me cut off the recorder first.